and not in like 5 minutes when honestly most people will probably be like, oh, there's a thing going on. Hey everyone, welcome to guess what? This is the 11th episode of Live Free and Rant. We've been living as free as we can in these times and ranting as much as we can for 11 weeks in a row.
Yeah, and people still watch, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy ride, and it's been fun to see. Like beginning, we kind of like covered a few different topics. Then eventually, we started to see, oh, guess what? A lot of these topics tend to just suck all the air out of the room on their own, and it's like rather than hey, we got 5 things to cover, we got just one thing. And then, of course, the rants have gotten a little bit more epic because during this whole, nonsense we've been all dealing with globally, there's been quite a lot of irateness coming from people like us who love freedom. And especially last week, if you did not watch last week's episode, you have to go there because it was a good one. It was a lot of like, oh my gosh, I hate government, everything sucks, all that kind of stuff. But this week, we're not being that way. Oh, no, we're not. I mean, a little bit because we always hate government, but whatever. But this week, we're going to talk about what's good in the world.
Or what could be good in the world.
And I know that might make us a little bit bipolar or something, but hey, let me share this little meme really quick. This is shared by no other than the illustrious Elon Musk himself. And yes, we are kind of taking both pills today in that we're still grouchy at all the other stuff, but I'm feeling pretty good, and there's a lot of positive stuff going around. And more, not just
the sun.
Yeah.
The sun started coming out. It's warm outside. I mean, the mayflies are just horrendous.
They're mayflies.
Everybody knows that. But there are good things that will come out of this post-pandemic. So,
yeah, that's for sure. One thing I've definitely noticed is going back to that thing I shared about Elon Musk. First off, Elon Musk is the reincarnation of Steve Jobs to a certain extent. He's like the tech billionaire kind of person who he's like pushing the envelope on new stuff and just happened to be like the cult of personality kind of tech guy. Like the only reason people even remember Bill Gates is he was the richest guy in the world for a while, and then now he's trying to vaccinate everyone. So basically, people don't know many tech people,
If Bill Gates vaccines work like Microsoft does, then I want nothing to do with it because that is the garbage operating system.
Yeah, they haven't been able to deal viruses in their own program. How are they going to eliminate them in people, Which I cannot say I came up with that, but it is still pretty classic. So, the good thing, so Elon Musk kind of took it to a very, 21st century level of popularity and stardom to where he's just tweeting random weird dank memes, and he's just like, we're going to build, not just, we're going to like safely, but kind of boldly expand the automotive industry. It's like, send rockets out there. We're going to colonize Mars, throw stuff at a truck, smash the windows. Who cares? And then like now he's like, name my kid after my router password or whatever, like all that not crazy stuff. And he's gotten quite the following. And now he's been basically all don't tread on me for a while, which is pretty incredible.
It is pretty incredible because he was not necessarily conservative or liberty oriented before. But as soon as the government started treading on him, he just went full like F the government mode, right? Like he tweeted, I think it was like a year ago, he tweeted something that was illegal because of the SEC, and he ended up settling, and he like wasn't supposed to tweet, and there was concern that the board was going to take away his company from him. And if you take Elon Musk out of Tesla, Tesla's done, right?
Yeah.
If you took Steve Jobs out of Apple in 1980, Apple doesn't come back. I'm not using the computer that I'm using today.
Yeah, before they
iPhones
had
don't
the
exist.
same iPhone to just re-release a million times for the next 10 years until the company invariably folds. Hey.
Yeah, no, I mean they make minor little tweaks now, and I mean their computers are great. I love their computers and the iPhone. I use iPhones, but they're not breaking any new technological ground really anymore. They're just kind of treading water, trying to keep up with like Samsung and all the other tech producers. Um, but yeah, you take Elon Musk out of Tesla, and Tesla's done.
Yeah,
I mean, that guy is what keeps Tesla in the news, especially because the guy tweets outrageous things.
yeah, absolutely
I
done
mean,
so.
he's almost as bad as Trump.
Yeah, so Dave Sanders says, "Hey, Joel, remember me from Converse saying Christians? Yes, I do. Hey, how's it going? I'm glad you came over to watch, and good a time as any to interrupt the thing to just say, subs. I always get it backwards. Subscribe, donate, get that out of the way. Now, the funny thing about Musk being all gone galt and he's like wanting to go to Texas. I think that's going to empower a lot of people who aren't just like right wingers. It's like in the past, it's been a lot of people saying, "Oh, I can't stand California and they're commie, blah blah blah. I'm going to move out." Or you have a gun manufacturer, which while not political by necessity, it just ends up being that way. And like, oh, we're going to take ours out if you regulate, or it's just something like Amazon, which is just like, oh, we're going to find a place where is the best taxes or the best corporate bailouts for us or whatever it ends up being. But then you have just someone saying, I want basically screw the government and that's why I want out of this state. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's been happening on a scale of some kind for the past couple of years, right? Because California has just gone like full craziness. And people have been leaving. My wife listens to this podcast.
I'm sorry.
I don't really remember what it's called.
Oh, this podcast. Okay.
Well, she listens to this one too. Yeah. She listens to a podcast from this woman in California that she started, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. And this woman like wrote books and all that kind of stuff. And they lived in California up until recently. And then they moved to Texas, I believe. So there's a lot of these, big names. I mean, Joe Rogan's talking about leaving California if he can't do stand up until 2021 or whatever craziness is going on out there. So the from these cuckoo lefty places, California, New York, New Jersey, was starting to speed up after they repealed the SALT deduction, which is the state and local property tax or state and local tax deduction. You can take it off your federal taxes. So basically you pay the same amount in taxes. And then when they repealed that and limited it to $10,000, these rich people or, the more well-off that have property and pay a lot of the state and local taxes in these lefty places were like, well, wait a minute, now I'm getting double taxed. And they started looking for tax havens, Florida, Texas. I don't know if New Hampshire has seen a lot of that yet, but things like that. So, I mean, it's great. And now Elon Musk is all like, I am out of here as soon as humanly possible, going to Texas or Nevada, screw Ventura County or Alameda County, whatever county he's in. Take it away. Don't care. I'm out of here.
Yes, which, as it turns out, is something a lot of people are doing, which comes to our next fun meme here. Californians looking to go to Texas, but then Texas are like, eh. Which, of course, if you're a freedom-loving, happy business person, absolutely go to freer places. The problem is stereotypically, what happens is the cycle is small places, small, unpopulated, whatever, tend to trend right-leaning, especially in the freedom ways, in the economic kind of freedom ways. Like, you can have a gun, no permit for this, just whatever, because they don't, I guess they don't see a need for it or whatever. And that makes it an attractive place for people who are tired of their big, gross lefty cities to go. And then they go, and then they start voting as they did back then, and then they ruin the place, and then they find a new place to spread their pestilence and misery and despair. So hopefully it isn't just so much of this place is cheaper, I'm going to move there. Or, isn't it so nice and quaint and unspoiled? And they're not thinking about why they're moving. Now, hopefully, the leadership of Lord Musk hopefully starts to show people, hey, there's an ideological reason to move. It's not just it's cheaper here, whatever, but we're moving because of these reasons. Because screw the government trying to ruin our lives. And once you've done that, then your likelihood of endorsing crappy government like that when you move there is much lower. So it's a different kind of mover, almost like a Free State Project mover, you know?
I was just gonna say they finally discovered the concept of the Free State Project, right? And there's actually, I noticed a tweet last week. I was scrolling through Twitter, and it was I think Cernovich, Mike Cernovich. Not exactly sure who he is, but he's got I don't want that. Here we go. He is a filmmaker, I guess. He made the movie Hoaxed. Okay. Author of Guerrilla Mindset and a journalist. So he tweeted last week at some point, he said, 10 years ago, libertarians had this kooky idea to do the Free State Project. And well, guess what? Now it's not so kooky, right?
Everyone's doing
because everybody else is discovering that, you can vote with your feet. You can move to free places and make them more free, as opposed to what's been happening naturally over the past couple decades, which is people leave these unfree places to go to free places, and then they vote against freedom. It's like, stop it. Stop ruining our state.
Makes no sense. Yeah. I think that with the free flow of information that's more as part of this new information age, I think that we're trending in that direction generally, where people are going to start seeing, hey, this isn't so great. Or they're starting to think about why things are. They don't just like look up property values. And I think that's one of the best things about this whole nasty situation happening in the middle of the peak of the information age. Is now you have people basically just saying, like, they just go on Twitter or Facebook or wherever they go, and then they just see friends and family, because people are so interconnected. And how often do you have your entire class of whoever locally just ends up living all in the same 100-mile radius? It's like not that much anymore. People scattered all over the place, and because of social media, rather than just with a long quill and dear so and so and writing that, you just see into their very life, and you get to see, like, hey, how come he's having to drink out on the patio and I'm not? It's like, oh, how come I'm under constant lockdown? And then you start to actually see the difference in the daily life, and not just look up on Zillow valuations of, I can get a house in Mississippi for 20 grand. It's like, and it's not just that. It's like now you actually see the lifestyle differences, and you can start seeing that some places are opening up and doing lots of cool things. And then you're like, hey, why don't I move there for those reasons? Or you see people just not dying. And eventually you see this perfect flow of information, more perfect flow rather, start to cause people to voluntarily segregate into communities that best suit themselves, rather than let's all move to Raleigh, Durham, and just start turning that place into start gentrifying that in a great way, but then eventually turn into a status hellhole. So hopefully, and by the way, this is going to sound a little bit weird. I'm all for status hellholes, just not here. But here's the flip side of that, right? So here's what's happening in California, New York, Illinois, and a couple other places. So these states have just been horribly, horribly managed for who knows how long, and they've run up these massive deficits and debts. Not so much in their, they don't have like bonds out necessarily, but they have these pension plans that in 5, 10, 20 years are going to be bankrupt. And all these state employees that work for the state are going to be left with no pension, right? And so because of the current crisis, now they see the federal government just turning on those print some more paper. They get the printers all fired up, digital, physical, whatever. Speaking of what, the Fed chairman actually I have $500 here.
What's that?
I have $500
Venezuela?
Here. Yeah, this is worth so
that won't
small.
even buy you toilet paper.
Yeah, I mean,
so
let me try it out real quick. It's a little scratchy.
A little scratchy. So when you get these states that have just been horribly mismanaged. Now they're going broke. They see the federal government turning on the money printers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "Hey, we can use this to solve our problems. We need the federal government to bail us out." So they've been begging the federal government for like trillions of dollars. I don't even know what the total number is, but they want the federal government to bail out these horribly mismanaged states. Now, so what we're talking about is free people, using the free flow of information to move to better places that are better managed. But if you get for auspiciously a better life, right? But if you get states like California, so what's supposed to happen in a free market, right, is if a company is horribly mismanaged and you stop patronizing that company goes out of business.
Mm-hmm.
But with government, of course, heaven forbid, they're too big to fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if people and businesses are leaving places like California because they're just horribly mismanaged, overregulated, overtaxed, over tyrannied, whatever, and you get all these businesses leaving, and you get all these wealthy residents leaving, and all the wealthy income earners leaving, and all of a sudden your tax revenues just plummet because there's nobody there to pay taxes anymore. The federal government shouldn't be going in and bailing them out. That's just rewarding bad behavior, and then they have no incentive to change. On the other hand, if you leave those states in the states had to be responsive to what they're actually doing, then maybe things would change and they wouldn't be able to just get away with what they've been getting away with. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly. I definitely see, and one of the biggest things that I've noticed is crazy is like how, say, like tax filing deadlines have been extended because of this. It's like, oh, you mean we can just say, I don't need it till later. And how people are just like, yeah, I'm going to cut hair before my time, sorry. And in the most extreme case, some lady got, as we covered last time, or a couple times ago, I don't remember, got thrown in the pokey for a few days, then got let out, and then got like 500 grand. it's like we start seeing this kind of bounce back to now people realize that they can go against, I'm not gonna go full key and say the wishes of the crown and all that nonsense, but they can go against what they're told that they should be doing. They need to, like, the sanctity of law is gone, and that's a fantastic thing because now they're just saying like, hey, we like say you have the same, let's just say the Democrat governor states, which, by the way, as we've ranted a million times about here, it's not just Democrat governors, so it's not that simple, right? But that's like an easy way of just drawing the line. The states that are under statist leadership, and oddly enough, by the way, I do think it is more drawn on those party lines because Trump is a thing. Because now he's Mr. Politicize and personalize everything. And so, because of this, he's just like, when you get it back to work, all this kind of stuff has become a political point. So now if you're against him, you're going to be pro-mask and things like that, pro-shutdown in any way. And so the opposite is true. So you're going to have a very subset of states that are going to become much more bankrupt, if that's even a thing you can measure, right? They're going to become much worse off than the other ones, and they're going to want a bailout from the other ones at the federal level. And then Mr. Loudmouth up there is going to be this wrong, it's terrible. He's going to be all freaking out about his people, his voters, having to pay for these people. You're fired, out of the union, go to the Articles of Confederation, or like whatever. It's just going to be glorious. And basically, there's not going to be that ability to just bail out other states now. Just people aren't going to buy it. And before it's like, well, we have to, all this kind of stuff. Now it's like, nah, we're not going to do it. And a lot of people I can even see, by the way, I don't know if this is a prediction, but I'm like 60%, 70% on this. I could even see a situation where the red states are going to be hosed by some bailout thing where Trump actually offhandedly says something like people in red states shouldn't pay federal taxes anymore. Well, I don't think he'd be like super come out like advocating that, but his hot mic moment is just, what if everyone who voted for me just didn't pay federal taxes anymore? No federal taxes, nothing until the bailout stop. And then just saying, like, I could see a crazy a crazy world where something like that actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, the guy tweets just kind of whatever's on his mind. So I wouldn't be
There's
surprised
a
if
lot on
something.
his mind, as it turns out. Holy crap!
I mean, he tweeted today this video of,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about kicking a dead dog. He brought up Mitt Romney again. You just
Yeah.
all caps, loser, with a video showing. It starts out with a video of Obama winning in 2012 against Romney, and then it pivots into Hillary Clinton getting slaughtered by Donald Trump in 2016, which it's just this amazing video that has like no relevance at all because Mitt Romney is just like the junior senator from Utah that nobody really cares about, right? I mean, he's just this never Trumper who's kind of like Jeff Flake, and they just, Jennifer Horn and in that gang of, I guess
People.
you can losers, right?
Yeah, and
Use Trump's word.
I would use that in the context of it doesn't seem to have worked out well for them, and not in not in an insulting capacity, but by the way, it is funny because I remember back in my days when I was like working for AFP Arizona back in was it 2009 or so. Jeff Flake was like one of the best Liberty reps in all of Congress. He's a super solid guy. And then just over time, all of a sudden, he just started to become like kind of lefty, and then he just became the poster child for the Never Trump thing, which
He got swamped.
yeah,
He got swamped. He got swallowed by the swamp and spit back out. And it happens over and over and over again. And I am thoroughly impressed by the people that are able to resist it, like Thomas Massey, to an extent, Justin Amash, but he's kind of like half swamp creature, half
it's hard to tell.
weirdo.
And then Rand, of course, which
Rand, of course,
I think
yeah, but he
Rand, like on a very small, brief side note, Rand is great at taken in without the context of his dad. If you just say like, "Who is this senator?" Oh yeah, this guy's a great dude. Yeah, he could be better on some things, but he's mostly pretty great. But if
you stack him next to his father, all of a sudden he looks like a statist.
Yeah, and that's whatever. I can't.
Which is fine.
I can't judge a man who's done more for liberty in his life than I could ever hope to. So, but so we're getting to this. It's not just federalism. It's not just, it's not just 10th Amendment, state rights, that kind of movement. It's not just people moving and becoming educated about what they want and then moving into areas that are like that. It's beyond that to where now when we talk about, we've kind of conflated a lot of things where people talk about the virus and the pandemic in the context of government. And people try to pretend like they're the same thing. What's happened to the world, that the virus happening to the world and government happening to the world are the same thing when they're not. They're absolutely not. But there are some things that, as a result of the virus, the free market has figured out some things that are good. And I don't say as a result of the havoc the government's caused because of the virus. No, just because of the virus itself. First off, as we covered, I think it was on like the inaugural show or like the first couple weeks, just the death of The Office, where there's a lot of people who just like, and this is the thing about the free market. One thing people don't quite realize about the free market, who are supporters of the free market, is it's not a precise instrument. It's not like because there's a free market, everything is 100% efficiency at all times. No, it just means that it's the most efficient system out there, and things that are inefficient will fall behind. And all other things equal, of course. So there has been a lot of inefficiency that's hung out there for a while, in that people still have old school offices. They rent out crappy carpet office space. People commute. They die on their commutes all the time, especially when daylight savings time switches. They just die en masse on that day. It's just a lot of antiquated ideas that held on because the companies that were using that were profitable enough, and it's like, the office space isn't that much, and we don't know how productivity is going to change. But just in a true free market environment, things change. Like a virus happens where people decide to stay home, and now that's the shakeup that happens in the free market, if allowed to. That now it's all of a sudden, hey, we don't need this. I think there's a lot more people who are going to be into homeschooling and distance learning because of this. And the delivery systems like DoorDash and those kinds of things, I think, are going to be on the next level after this. Video conferencing and things like how many, like, I'm not, obviously I'm painting with a broad brush, but like how many old people have now learned to use Zoom and other things like that, and like learn the basics of 3-point lighting to where like,
well, enough people have learned about Zoom that we can stop calling them boomers and start calling them Zoomers.
yeah. Although the Zoomers I always called zoodles anyway, because that's kind of funny, because that's what they also call zucchini noodles, and yeah, why not? So
what's a zucchini noodle?
I wish I didn't know.
Is that like fake pasta?
Yes, essentially. They call those zoodles.
My big pet peeve, just random tangent, is when people call things a name that they're not, right? Like almond milk is not milk. It is pureed almond.
Yeah. Although
or
oat milk. Although in the case of almond milk, I will call it milk if I could call it nut milk, because that just sounds awesome. You want some nut milk in your coffee? So
I've never seen a teat on a nut either.
well,
nope, not an almond, not a nut, not anything.
Yeah. So basically, the whole world's lurching forward into technological competence, and
yeah,
like Amazon is just absolutely killing it. And with all the drivers that haven't been like now the production lines and the delivery systems that Amazon's already been kind of making huge inroads on, now people are kind of saying like, oh, do we need little in-person stores anymore? Kind of not. I think that, like, here's the thing. I noticed that mom and pop shops, I mean, obviously small businesses are affected the worst by things like this. But as far as the concept of small mom and pop shops, I think they've been on the rise for the last 10 or so years. Whereas the big box type stores have gone online more. And, like JCPenney's gone, thank the Lord. And Sears is gone. All these places all those awful big box stores are gone. They're all going online. And that leaves more room for just like people who want to go into a little shop and hang around and stuff like that. So Amazon taking over the world like that is, the Amazon experience is honestly way better than almost anything else. And I think that that's really going to push a lot more people in that direction of, doing that kind of stuff. And then competitors to Amazon might show up as well. But just that whole thing is pretty cool. Let's see. I'm sure you're smirking at, yeah.
Well, I got Janine Nodder sent me a picture of the nut milk in her fridge. Vanilla flavored nut milk.
Vanilla flavored nut milk. Just don't get any of that asparagus flavored nut milk. That's no good. But anyway, moving on. What other kind of fantastic innovations and future things might we see come out of this whole thing?
Well, one other thing, I hope, a lot of regulations, right, have been suspended, quote unquote, because of this. She's going to get fake pasta too. So a lot of regulations have been suspended because of this, pandemic, because they realized if we suspend these regulations, it will allow things to work more efficiently. It will remove a barrier to get things done, right? So they've suspended a few things. Like one of my favorite things is that restaurants and breweries were suddenly allowed to deliver beer, which is fantastic. I think that should always be the case, right? You should be able to call up and order a pizza and get a 6-pack with it. Especially if you're, imbibing in some substances that make driving not safe. Just, instead of going to the liquor store to get another handle, just have them bring it right to your door. And then that takes away some risk and all that. So regulations like that are good. Open container laws. You didn't hit on that, did you? I was distracted by the nut milk.
Nut milk is a very distracting
There's a good article.
thing.
There was a good article in Reason, I think it was, either yesterday or the day before. But what purpose do open container laws serve? Right? Are they making anybody safer? Some states. New Hampshire technically does not have an open container law. Dan Hines reminds me of that all the time. Some municipalities. Some municipalities have an ordinance against it. Bad enough Grubhub guy, don't eat my fries. Now give him beer. Yeah, don't order from Grubhub then. Just get it straight from the good places. I don't know. Grubhub might be fun. I don't know. I've never ordered from
that's
Grubhub.
apparently some delivery drivers have done that kind of stuff to where it's like a meme and a joke going around.
Well, the free market will probably solve that problem real fast, won't it? The market always provides. It's not always as fast as we'd like, and sometimes it's wrong, but it always corrects itself. It doesn't have the adverse effect of typically when government tries to correct something, they overcorrect and just ruin a million other things at the same time. It's like when your 2-year-old builds a little Lego tower and you put a Lego on top that he doesn't like, and all of a sudden he becomes the government and he just comes in and kicks the whole Lego tower over and you're back to square one. That's how the government solves problems. Okay.
Toddlers straight from the government.
It's a brunt force. Yes. They're brunt forces that instead of the market always provide. The intention is generally good, right? Not to malign anybody. That's how the government that tries problems, to get something done through government, right? Because laws are generally well-intentioned. You get something like they're brunt forces. Let's look at the Social Security Act, which was passed during the market first Great Depression. We're now in the second Great Depression, but we're not being negative today. We're not being negative. No negativity. So the Social Security Act and all of these other programs came as a result of the first Great Depression. And they were well-intentioned, like, make sure people don't starve to death, right? That was basically the intention. Give people this safety net. And what happened was it ended up delaying and prolonging the recovery by years. So we could have bounced out of the Great Depression years earlier, but the government got in the way, and the unintended consequences of that were a prolonged recovery with slower growth.
Now, what if the government actually gets out of the way? Now, that's the crazy thing. So, once again, if you're just tuning in, subscribe wherever this is being watched. Donate via Patreon. Throw us a few bucks, and then there's crypto stuff up there if you want to go donate. So, do all those things. Now, we're talking about progress and ways this thing lurches forward. Drone delivery might be a thing, but when you're talking about the outside, like, the U.S. has the worst, most antiquated liquor laws I've seen, like outside of possibly a fully Muslim country. So I would like their, like, as you said, the open container laws really need to go. It's a nice day and it's great to, like, I just want to be able to walk down the street with a cold one. And
yeah, I mean, I'll admit I do it at my house, but I live
at your house,
like with deer and bears. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's it would be. And by the way, in case anyone hasn't like been to Europe, it's like that over there. Most places you could just walk around, and what's funny is it's very dependent on a cultural personal responsibility. So, for example, when I was in Switzerland last year, the public transit, you could eat and drink booze on the public transit, and I saw people doing this. I saw some guy like go on with a beer, just chugging it, and spotless. You will never see anything that clean. It's like the whole thing is clean, and they don't do an honor system for tickets. And I think they do fine you if they catch you without one, but there's no one like checking them. You can just show up on the thing, eat your pretzel from Der Pretzelkönig, and drink your beer, and just be on the metro and just not cause a scene. And guess what? Freedom isn't actually that dangerous. I would definitely like to see that around here. Now, driving around, that's always a little bit of a rough thing. But that's why deregulating ride sharing and things like that would be great. And what I'd love to have is, I'd love to have a way that people could, jump on a bike or something like that and go downtown, or like just simple. So I'm sure anyone who's been at any kind of like a amusement park type situation or something like that, a lot of time there's little like trolleys that like, or little, some guy on a bike with like a attached carriage to the back who could take you up and home. And like, especially, I mean, obviously having can you imagine like institutional, like a little bit more streamlined group Ubers for like all kinds of people that basically through technology, rather than just doing a one and back, if you could just pile in with a bunch of other drunk people and just kind of go back and he drops them all back at their respective houses and comes back just for that kind of a service. And, you know, at pre-scheduled times, like every 10 minutes, there's a new, or, you know, every 15 minutes, let's say, there's a new, you know, drunk mobile coming by that just piles everyone in the back and then he just takes everyone kind of home within a certain radius and then just keeps going and keeps going. And just all of a sudden you don't have to worry about the whole drink, you know, the whole drinking out kind of problem or whole crashing and just dying. Or you don't have to worry about, let's say, 100 separate cars flying all over the place. You just got 10 doing a lot more driving, but still it's like a lot lower. What was that word? Emissions that we like to talk about. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that could definitely come out of now that, for example, in New Hampshire right now, restaurants and everything are now open and they're doing only outside delivery or only outside services like patio. And so now it's like, well, I just went by Adele's coffee place in Dover right here, and they basically blocked out all their like front of the store all parking spots, and they're just putting tables. That whole thing is now the outdoors, and it's like, oh, that's great. And then you see tables out back, and it's like, hopefully once this goes back to everyone can pile on indoors as much as they want, hopefully they still let them do these kinds of outdoor things. That now it's like you don't have to be all, you know, confined to like, well, according to the state easement and this and that, we only 5 feet of the building and the maximum capacity of like. Hopefully all that stuff just kind of goes away eventually.
Hopefully. So like in my town, same thing. Obviously, restaurants are allowed to open. They're allowed. You're allowed to earn a living today, folks. The restaurants are allowed to open for outdoor dining. My town required that restaurants that wanted to do that just submit a form so that the fire department knew or something. The fire department wanted to check it out, make sure you're not exceeding capacity, I guess, or make sure you're not meeting on top of a sewer system. I don't even know what their justification was. But so, you know, one of the local restaurants near me, you know, they're putting concrete dividers up in the parking lot so nobody parks in the outdoor dining area. They're setting up all the chairs and stuff. So a lot of places are doing that. And I mean, this form that you had to submit in my town said, you know, at the latest, everything has to be back inside by, it was either October 15th or November 15th. But of course, it's New England in the winter after that. So nobody really wants to eat outside in December, January, February. But hopefully we can get it back for next spring and summer and all the years to come. And it probably just requires something as simple as getting state and local government out of the way.
Yeah, and that also makes me think of maybe I'm a crazy person, and yeah, I think I am, but I would not mind outdoor stuff in the middle of a snowstorm. As long as there's a covering and as long as there's a fire or a heat lamp, like I wouldn't mind going out there with a coat on and like a warm beverage or whatever, or cold beverage even, hanging around like a fire or like a heat lamp and something like that. So, for example, in the middle of summer in Phoenix, people still go do patio stuff, which is like 120 degrees. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Just roast outside, except they have a bunch of like the sprinklers, what do they call it? The misters. The misters are everywhere. Sometimes you walk down like a couple blocks in Old Town Scottsdale, and it's just everywhere you see is just nothing but misters, just raining the mist down all over the place. And so I wouldn't. How cool would that be if you could go down like a walk down like Dover or Portsmouth downtown, and then all these places had like outdoor heat lamp places, so you're just walking through the snow next to like outdoor people eating, drinking, whatever. I mean, that would be pretty cool. That's like
and you can warm up as you go. But you hit the nail on the head, and I don't even think you realized it, right? Because you're talking about driving downtown Dover and having all of these places have heat warmers.
Mm-hmm.
So the places themselves would put them outside to encourage outdoor seating to expand their capacity in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Governments, local governments should absolutely not do anything like this. Do
Yeah.
not spend tax dollars to put heat lamps on the streets so people will walk around in the winter. Let private business do it in places like Dover, Portsmouth, Manchester, if they choose to do it.
Yeah. That would be, I mean, obviously that would be great. And like, if you think about what I want people to really think about is that the free market is possibility. Freedom is possibility. It's nothing concrete. It's just you can. That means you can fail. That means things can go poorly. That means all of those kinds of things. That also means, but what if? What if we can make something awesome happen? And as part of this like awesome happen thing, like also imagine like a whole downtown area where in between all the, you know, outdoor winter seating areas and stuff, you can just have like a row of like barrels with like flame or heat or whatever. So you just like you're walking down like with a t-shirt on in the middle outside in the middle of a snowy area or whatever, like the kinds of things that you could do with fire hazard, this and that and blah blah blah. And if it weren't problems like that, and just think about all the extra money that might cost to put on, but if you aren't spending all this extra money due to needless regulations or thrown away in tax dollars all the time, you have that to provide something really cool and really special. So I think that there's a lot of things we could definitely look forward to with this whole thing. One thing I'm definitely noticing is the human brain's a weird place, obviously, and has capacity for a lot of different. Just like, what's the matter with just sitting here at this desk and working all day? Like, oh no, I got to move around. Otherwise, the work doesn't come out well here if I don't get outside and do, all right, vitamin D. I need this vitamin D stuff. It's like there's just all this weirdness in the human brain that now for people traveling to work every day and sitting in a cold dark office or whatever, or cold oddly well fluorescent lit unhealthy office all the time, maybe not the best thing to happen. And if you think about it, how much better are people going to be in their off time if they don't have to do things like that? For example, think of like with this whole, oh, we've been cooped up inside forever. Now everyone's like really, you know, doing a lot of stuff outside now. People who don't normally exercise are now going out on hikes, and it's like, it's just all this great stuff. And I think you'll also see that with people who normally are just tired of seeing people because they're at the office all day and all that kind of nonsense. They're tired of seeing people in a suboptimal context. And now when they get to just work at home all the time, now they actually have more hunger for people and social. Well, it sounds a little creepy to say it that way, but they have a little bit more room for socialization outside of that. And then there's more quality of life that comes out of that. And so I can easily see that with a lot of people who, instead of just spending all this time and money commuting, they get to just work from home, and then they have extra money that they're not spending on commuting and extra time and energy that they weren't otherwise, you know, just burned out from being face to face with people all day. Just going out there and throwing more, like going out a couple, 2-3 times a week rather than just once a week, because they can afford it.
And on top of that, if not everybody is driving to these metropolises, we don't have to keep widening the highways and building new bridges and new tunnels that cost billions of dollars every year. The 10-year plan for like the New Hampshire interstate system is like to widen I-93 to be basically like a Boston highway, which is ridiculous. But still, if you come up Friday at like 4 or 5 p.m., if you're coming from Massachusetts up 93, you hit like dead stop traffic around exit 4 for, you know, and it's frustrating. Or if you're going up to the White Mountain, I mean, traffic for, you know, tourists is always going to be a thing, right? Like you can't make the 93 going through the White Mountains 4 lanes. You just, it's not economically feasible. But to your point, if you're not traveling every day to go work in these cities, like if you don't have to be in your office, then it's just going to cut down on infrastructure costs, gas, wear and tear on your vehicle. You'll have extra time every day. You'll probably be happier. I don't know if everybody will be, but I would be happier if I didn't have to drive. Like if I was driving through Boston to get to, like, say, Brockton every day, I would probably lose my mind.
Yeah, and most of the people who already do that have also lost their mind. They just don't know it yet. But this is it's one of those things where you can just imagine all that extra efficiency. Also, you could probably fire 90% of cops. Just saying, like, if you're not pulling people over all the time and, attacking the roadways, like, what are you really doing? I mean, around here, there's just not that much to do. Just check in on people sometimes. Once in a while, there's a crazy person who, might off his wife or something. You got to deal with that. I mean, stuff happens, right? But it's not to this volume where you need hundreds and hundreds all over the place, and they're just sitting in their car watching people fly by and just be like, well, if one person goes this fast, maybe I'll have to go out there and check in on things. And yeah, there's a lot of savings you can do from there. There's a lot of time for extracurricular activities. Like, for example, like, how many people out there, how many of these office rats do something like some social physical exercise type thing, like a sport, or a combat sport or something like that? Like, very few probably. But how many more people would have like a more time on their hands and like and a little more money to do that, and more willingness to to actually go out and see people after they've been with people all day long and do that? And how many people who are in rat race jobs right now would love to drop out and teach jujitsu or whatever on the side for a living, who now could because of the increase in actual consumer demand because of this. And also, so this is a fun thing to think about with the makeup of cities changing and what that means for health. With the more remote world, there's just all this, like, the tax stuff is all for, like, urban infrastructure and all this kind of nonsense because we have so many people. And when I first moved out here from Phoenix, I was looking for, jobs and job-centric things and, big cities. And I really liked New Hampshire. I heard about the Free State Project. I thought this is great. But I didn't move immediately because there was just no jobs for, like, my, public policy nonsense kind of background. And so eventually I just moved anyway. And, I found some part-time jobs and stuff in that. But then eventually just had to create my own career. Now I just work for remotely doing stuff like this, right? And I could do that from anywhere. And like, as far as my career, the actual jobs, my old career, the actual jobs in this area are like all taken up by our friends at AFP. That's like, we all can, like, all like four of us can go out for beer together, and that's it. Like, that's the only people that can have those jobs. Like, you can't have any more in the state, really, because of that. But I really like where I live because it's got a little urban-y bits, a little downtown walkable, few, like, 3 breweries, walking distance, that kind of stuff. But it's also a small town. I mean, it's like 30,000 people. I mean, it's one of the largest in New Hampshire, which is how podunk this place is. But it's like, it's a nice spot, but it's also small, and it's not a hectic, horrible, huge city. And most people live in hectic, horrible, huge cities because they need it to get all what they want out of life, like jobs. But what happens when people start working remotely? Now they can start moving out and spreading out a little bit. The natural human condition would be to not live all in one giant spot. And so, for example, like, a lot of people love the White Mountains in the North Country, even though it gets colder there. But there's just nothing going on there in a lot of places because people just, you're going to commute like 3 hours to, But what happens if you can just have your online only job and you have little small pockets of places? What does that do for avoiding pandemics entirely, where you just don't have this New York City there to just spread everything to everyone and just kill so many people? What can we do to just avoid this kind of thing in the future just by spreading out?
For starters, you don't order patients with the disease you're trying to prevent to go back into the long-term care facilities where you're trying to prevent the disease. So, like, Cuomo and a bunch of other governors were ordering these long-term care facilities to take positive patients. But that's a side point. You don't order the sick back into the infirmary because that just gets everybody else sick, right?
Of course.
But a second point, right? So what a problem we're going to run into as people attempt to flee cities, right? Because there are a lot of people that have to live in the city, like you said, but if they can work remotely, well, then they don't have to be close. If they only have to drive to Boston once a week, well, you could live like, I don't know, 3 hours away, maybe in, the White Mountains, North Conway area, or Western New Hampshire, or even, Northern Vermont. And as people, like you said, the condition is to spread out. The problems they'll run into are more petty tyrants, of course, but local planning boards that prohibit development, right? So, for example, like in Peterborough, in my district, you need at least like 3 acres to be able to build a dwelling unit, and there's a ton of land there, but people are resistant to building more houses because they like their I call them the museum curators. They want the town to be exactly as it is and exactly as it was, and
forever and ever.
Development
Amen.
is bad forever and ever. And if there is going to be development, it has to be downtown, and we have to get creative, and we have to start stacking things on top of things and make it more dense, which is like, well, wait a minute. Why are you trying to make a more dense population stacking things on top of each other downtown instead of, allowing these single family units like on an acre or half an acre? That's a pretty nice community. And as always, the free market will determine, like if I own 19 acres. Like if somebody wanted to buy my land and build 19 houses, I would sell it to them in a heartbeat, right? Because I could probably charge a premium.
Of course.
And then I would find 19 acres somewhere else and start over. But some people might like their little, like my neighbor has 52, 51, somewhere in that range. He has 50 acres. He carved off the 19 that I own from the original lot, but I can't see him, subdividing into, he doesn't want people to develop and stuff like that. So the free market will figure it out. Like even if it took my land and carved it all up and built 19 houses, my neighbor's still going to have his 50-acre sanctuary.
Of course. Yeah. And this is, if you've ever been on a road trip across the U.S., there's so much space. There's just so much not being used. There's some cool places out there like Wyoming, which I have not been to, by the way. I have friends there that are, a great, beautiful spot, extremely free. There's just no people. There's just almost no people anywhere. There's nothing. And you go, the north of Mexico is even, I would say, more extreme than the southwest of the U.S., where there's just no people. There's little teeny villages here and there, but it's mostly nothing. There's just so much space, and there's so many people crowded in these terrible spots, and it would be great to be able to spread out. But part of this whole evolution is not looking to government and officials for guidance anymore. That they're not the be all and end all. And there's something else to read from our good friend Greg Moore of AFP New Hampshire that I thought was pretty fun. Public health musings. In both state and national surveys, the percentage of people who say they trust public health leaders is slipping by the week. At the beginning of this, support was near universal, but as each week goes by, that support slides. I raise this because, as someone who worked in public health, I was always incredibly sensitive to doing everything to support and build public trust in that space. I've said it before, but with it, you can get people to follow your directives, and without it, you will be ignored. I've known a lot of people who work in public health. They're very dedicated. Pretty much all of them could have made more money doing something else in medicine. Very focused on stopping infectious disease and very knowledgeable. They also, by and large, have not a glint of cognition about public opinion and the importance of public trust. Here's my concern. The longer this thing goes on, the more people are going to become mistrustful of public health officials. A generation of young people right now are becoming that way. The point is that the next major public health episode that comes along runs the risk of the public just flat out ignoring things like social distancing, stay-at-home orders, and the like. Trying to implement public health interventions without the trust of the public is like trying to play the Pines course at the International Golf Club without a driver. Here's the thing. There's a group of people out there who are very attuned to the importance of credibility. They're called politicians. As it turns out, politicians are immensely sensitive to burning through public trust. Now is a time for political leaders globally to make sure that public health officials balance the trust of the public with every other data point as they navigate situations like the one we're in now. Remind those folks of the quote from Will Rogers that went, "If you're riding ahead of the herd, take a look back every now and then and make sure it's still there." Now, that's a long ramble. I'm sorry for reading all that. Greg is verbose, whatever. We love you, Greg. But essentially, people are the trust in public health is the same as trust in public anything. If you erode trust, then you can't get it back that easily. And Greg's talking about this in a way that makes it look a little bit negative, but I'm going to spin that as a positive because this is the positive podcast for a change. Live free and be positive. I'm glad they're questioning public health directives. I'm glad that their trust is eroding. I'm glad all that because all in all, from what we've been able to tell, it seems like the greatest damage has been done by public directives. And unfortunately, the great and tireless and smart people working in healthcare have done their best, and it's kind of all for naught in a certain extent because then you have the policy makers just saying, it seems about good, and just ruining giant things and then eroding that public trust. Because if you had public health officials just coming out and saying, hey, you know what? Or not even public, I don't even like that term because I don't believe in public health officials, but let's just say respected medical minds coming out and saying, hey, you know what? This is serious. This could spread to a lot of people. A lot of people you love could get hurt. Why don't you not go out as much? Why don't you keep 6 feet apart? Why don't you do this? And then, like, for the most part, people are like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And that kind of sorts itself out. You will have a lot of public spaces like restaurants that will suffer in their businesses as a result. That sucks, but they're not going to be shut down. They can still work around it. Just like the cigar bar up the street that has their state-of-the-art ventilation system that they were more than ready to use to make sure everyone there is safe. Unfortunately, they couldn't because there was a directive that eroded public trust. So when you have public trust is gone in this, I think that that's going to be a fantastic thing. And unfortunately, there is a little bit of a dark side where you will have some actual honest to goodness medical advice that gets ignored by giant swaths of the population in the future. And unfortunately, that's kind of the collateral damage that you get once you just erode public trust. But I think that the good part of it on all this is people will be finding their own way, as they always should have and as they always will. And that's going to lead to a better world with better solutions. And hopefully, the erosion of trust in public health officials is also going to be accompanied by an erosion in trust of public health regulations. And then hopefully you can actually have some efficient and fantastic healthcare system come back again so that now you don't actually have to worry about a system like this happening. Now you can actually create capacity. Now you can actually treat everything. And that's all I have to say for today.
Well, that was a pretty good rant there. No, I couldn't agree more. Regulation and law tends to stifle the free market. Everybody's like, "Oh, capital is what's that mean with the bike, right?" Like, "Oh, maybe we should just, ban this." And then it's the guy on the bike and he sticks the stick through the front wheel and he falls over and he goes, "Oh, capitalism failed." It's like, no, capitalism didn't fail. The government failed. Cronyism fails. Cronyism should fail. And that's what we're going through, right now. We have this, the governor's economic reopening task force, with GERT, G-E-R-T. Jess Edwards, the friendly representative from Auburn, pointed out the other day, it should be called CALF, C-A-L-F, the Committee Allowing for Limited Freedom. Because they're micromanaging, and this is to no fault of anybody on the committee itself.
Hopefully,
they're just doing the job that they were tasked to do, but they're going industry by industry. They're going incredibly slowly. Everybody, the restaurant industry was decided by the New Hampshire Lodgings and Restaurants Association pretty much, and they said, we don't want, if we can't have inside seating at 100% capacity, then we don't want anything at all. And well, that's what's allowed to open today is outdoor seating. And certain big churches in the state said, no, we're not going to open even if you allow us to, because we want to keep our congregation safe, a lot of at risk, whatever. And churches aren't allowed to congregate in the state unless you have a group of fewer than 10. And, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. All these industry leaders, it's not the small business owner, it's not Main Street Mike that's coming in. And, there's public input sessions, but once the NHLRA has spoken, what does Main Street Mike, is he going to persuade, 9 politicians and 9 essentially union representatives? Is he going to change their minds? I don't think he is.
Of course not.
So this isn't capitalism. This is cronyism. We're getting top-down mandates. We're getting top-down one-size-fits-all approaches, and not one size never fits all. Never.
Yes.
You could say to certain restaurants, you can have 100% capacity, and to them, that's automatically quote-unquote social distancing, whatever. You could say to others, you can have 10% capacity, and even with 10% capacity, they might not be able to meet social distancing standards. So one size fits all just never, ever works. And that's what we're getting. We're getting a lot of centralized economic planning from the top down, which is the absolute opposite of capitalism, right? Laissez-faire capitalism, yes. Free market economics is not one size fits all. It is not centrally planned. It is not any of those things. It is the individual. It's grassroots, not astroturf.
And I think we're going to see a shift away from that because the failures of all this, and I'm hopeful for such. But anyway, if you like...
I am too.
Well, if you like this, subscribe to whatever channel you're seeing this on. Probably it's going to be mostly Chris's Facebook friends. Give crypto, it's up here, and give dirty fiat over there. And we'll keep doing this. And that's it for this week. Tune in next week.
Probably. Yeah, we'll be back next Monday at right around 3 p.m.
Yep. And yeah.
Next Monday, right around 3 p.m. for Live Free and Rant 12.
Whoa.
Which will be 3 months of pandemicide.
Yeah. We'll see you there with another heaping spoonful of positivity. Bye.
Maybe.
Bye, guys.
Maybe we'll be negative again. Bye.